Welcome back, APUSH students. Today is chapter 38 of the American Pageant, titled Challenges to the Post-War Order. If you don't know the American Pageant, it's fine because the content is still going to be the same. I'm going to be going over all the key terms and notes for this chapter that helped me get a 5, so I encourage you to take notes along as well. Stagflation, inflation, and economic stagnation. These two negative economic trends work together to destroy prosperity and bewilder economists on how to get out of it. This economic state forced the government to limit spending, slow social welfare, and having to assist the labor market again. Watergate, Richard Nixon found spying on electoral opponents. Not only did it spell the end for Nixon's second term, it exposed further corruption in other government organizations, including the FBI and CIA. This is a crowning moment in the growing trend in the American people losing trust in the government. So with all this stuff going on in Vietnam and a lot of the FBI spying stuff and all the Red Scare stuff that happened a couple decades before, distrust in the government was reaching, ahead, and Nixon getting exposed for the spying stuff and having to resign was just the crowning moment, and it really capped off a period of large distrust in the government where reform was needed going forward. Executive privilege, special privileges given to the president. The Supreme Court ruled that Nixon had no special rights to withhold evidence of his crimes because he was a high figure. Because of this, the full dirt was revealed on his administration's malpractices. This special privileges stuff is kind of back in the news now with Trump and his trials and stuff like that. U.S. v. Nixon, name of the Watergate court case. In this case, numerous pieces of evidence revealed the criminality of Nixon's presidency, which shocked the American people into widespread doubt of the government. Smoking gun tapes, recordings of Nixon revealed in the courtroom. So when you hear the term smoking gun, this is where it comes from. The tape revealed that Nixon took part in planning the Watergate scandal, including using the FBI and CIA to assist him. The notorious tapes gave clear evidence for his impeachment, which forced him to resign. Fall of Saigon, collapse of South Vietnam, the American-supported kind of capitalist, democratic Vietnam part. This collapse ended the Vietnam War as the American-backed South Vietnam fell to the communist North. The desperate evacuation attempts undergone in Saigon threatened American prestige and American confidence in their government. Saigon rescues and just the images of Saigon, the fall of Saigon in the news were a disaster for the United States. Title IX, prohibited gender discrimination in education. It was a major win for the still thriving feminist movement, one of many victories that women made throughout the second wave of feminism. It helped to provide more opportunities for young girls in school, specifically in athletics, which created a new generation of women who had more opportunities growing up, leading to more female prosperity. Title IX is a huge thing for making sure women's clubs and women's sports get the same amount of funding by school districts, just to make an equal playing field between the girls at the school and the boys. Equal Rights Amendment, equal rights between men and women. It officially prohibited gender discrimination in clear words in the Constitution. The ERA created a basis for further state and federal laws that protected the rights of women. However, you'll see that there are many problems with this amendment and it eventually wasn't even passed, but we'll get to that later. Roe v. Wade protected abortion. Equal Rights Amendment, equal rights between men and women. It officially prohibited gender discrimination in clear words in the Constitution. The ERA created a basis for further state and federal laws that protected the rights of women. Even though on its face it seems like a very good thing to make these equal rights enshrined in the Constitution, there are actually many problems with it if you kind of critically think about it, because women and men have different needs and different protections, and this would kind of eliminate the ability to do any of that. So it wasn't even ratified by the states by the ratification deadline, and it still hasn't been ratified today. Roe v. Wade protected abortion. It laid the controversial decision on the constitutional right to privacy, another controversial decision made earlier. This monumental case stayed a topic of political discussion for its entire history, where it quickly became a battle not on the right of privacy, but between pro and anti-abortion arguments. I'm pretty sure the American Pageant was written before the Dobbs v. Jackson case, but Dobbs v. Jackson overturned Roe v. Wade pretty recently. Phyllis Schlafly, anti-ERA activist. Her advocacy led to the death of the Equal Rights Amendment, being that it was never ratified. She argued that the ERA got rid of the necessary protections for women because it put them on an equal playing field with men. Trudy, shut up. Second wave feminism broadened the range of first wave feminism. It extended the feminist movement to move beyond the legal sphere. Trudy! Shut the fuck up. It extended the feminist movement to move beyond the legal sphere, addressing issues like family, the workplace, gender roles, domesticity, abortion, sexuality, and other more cultural issues. A lot of people argue now we're in a sort of third wave feminism. I don't know if that's true, but the second wave came out after the voting rights and all that stuff originally was made. National Organization of Women, Organization for Second Wave Feminism. It became the central think tank and political lobbying arm for the new feminist movement. It was also more moderate, which made the cultural feminist movement more appealing to traditionalists. Which more radical feminist organization? This organization extended and even challenged the now feminism by doing things more radical and outlandish. It highlights the diversity in ambition and goals of the second wave feminist movement. These more radical feminist organizations is where the third wave feminist idea kind of comes out of. Milliken versus Bradley ruled that desegregation could not require students moving school districts. This limited desegregation plans by essentially protecting the mainly white suburbs from taking part in integration. This ruling made the often underfunded city schools shoulder integration, often creating worse problems inside schools. So the schools that didn't want to move their kids or bus kids to different school districts were kind of protected from taking part in a lot of the integration practices. And this put a large burden on the inner city schools that tend to have a more diverse body of students, and created a huge funding problem inside these schools. Bakke versus University of California ruled against affirmative action. Although it did uphold that race and ethnicity can be a factor, it did rule that making decisions based on race was unjust. The way that worked was that you can't have actual quotas or allocating a certain percentage of your admission spots to certain races. That wasn't allowed. This further complicated the moral civil rights question on affirmative action and how to undo years of oppression. American Indian Movement, civil rights for Native Americans. They were able to make great progress both through the legal system and through protests. They were able to reestablish their goal for separate and sovereign American Indian societies. New Right, New Conservative movement. This starts to bleed into the Reagan era. The New Conservative movement was full of activists, political organizations, and theoretical think tanks that took a populist conservative stance on the cultural war. This movement sparked the eventual political success of Ronald Reagan. The right side of the aisle, especially now in modern politics, is definitely huge on the culture war stuff. Jimmy Carter, Democrat presidential candidate. His personality of sincerity and down-to-earthity, if that's a word, helped persuade the American people who were affected by the government corruption, conspiracies, and malfunction. Carter was able to win the election against Gerald Ford by a narrow margin. Carter was eventually plagued with a lot of problems in his presidency, and he was an only one-term president. And a lot of it wasn't his fault, but a lot of it was. Camp David Agreement, peace agreement between Egypt and Israel. It became a spectacle and photo op representing one of Jimmy Carter's many foreign policy successes in his early presidency. Unfortunately, Jimmy Carter's focus on foreign policy had the side effect of reinvigorating the Cold War. Iranian Revolution, new anti-Western government in Iran. The new revolutionary government hated America and the West. Encouraged by anti-Western thoughts, Iran nationalized its oil supply and refused to export to the world, which caused energy shortages and OPEC prices to skyrocket. The West felt the energy pinch reemerge. This is when the Jimmy Carter era of gas rationing and gas prices skyrocketing took hold. Malay's speech, Jimmy Carter's speech during the energy crisis. His speech was largely out of touch as he blamed the discontent of the people during the oil crisis on their material greed and want. Carter fired people in his cabinet and expanded his own power in his attempts to shift the blame on others. This response to the crisis was an utter blunder and failure from the president. Neoconservatives, New Conservatives, revival in response to liberal failures. Neoconservatives, New Conservative revival in response to quote-unquote liberal failures. This group of conservatives, some deriving from liberals, began to speak loudly about capitalism, freedom, and deregulation. They also called into question the Great Society welfare programs, that was back to LBJ. Altogether, this movement aimed to shift the focus back to traditionalist values as a way to bring back the economy and social fabric. Its difference from traditional conservatism is a greater focus on American strength and foreign policy, straying far away from isolationist sentiment. Milton Friedman, capitalist economic thinker. His Nobel Prize-winning figure and his books/media advocated for the value of the free market in fixing problems, not activist big government. His thinking came in conjunction with the neoconservative rise. This connects to the idea of the deregulatory state, or attacking the regulatory state, trying to get rid of all the regulations that the government has on the free market. SALT II, arms race limitation talks between SALT II, arms race limitation talks between America and Russia. The important talks for easing the arms race, part of the Cold War, were shut down by the new interventionist conservative movement and political turmoil abroad. A lot of the new conservative ideas tried to really just fight Soviet power with power rather than trying to stop the arms race. Iranian hostage crisis, Muslim militants holding American embassy members hostage. The situation was tense of the American decision makers because they had to consider both the moral value of the American hostages and the political turmoil in the oil-rich strategic Persian region, and also its relation to the Soviet Union. Russia took advantage by launching an invasion into Afghanistan, and Carter committed a failed rescue team to the hostages. Altogether, the crisis and its aftermath put on full display of American incompetence. All the lack of confidence in the government was really just starting to spill over now. And that's a wrap. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next chapter, and goodbye.